This problem is from our Data About Us unit, and what we're going to be doing here in this unit is we're going to be looking at some of Celia's test grades, and we're going to be analyzing them by using some different measures of center. And the first one we're going to take a look at is called the median. So this is our data set right here that we have all of her test grades in. And when we're finding the median we want to think of as the number that's in the exact middle of our data set. So a lot of the times we think of the median as kind of like the medium. So what we want to do first with our data set is we want to order it from least to greatest so we can find that number that's in the exact center. So when we do that, we have 64 was her lowest score. We have 78. We have two 82s. I want to make sure I put both of them in because they were separate scores. And a 94. And you'll notice I was using a strategy of crossing off the number when I rewrote it in a list. Especially when we have larger data sets, it's very easy to forget a number or to make a mistake. So using techniques like this to ensure that you're copying all of the numbers down and you have the same amount of data, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 scores still, is important because it's super easy to make a mistake when we're working with statistics. Now that I have them in order from least to greatest, what we can do is we can cross a number off from our low end and our high end until we get to an exact middle. So I can cross my lowest data off, my highest test score off, my next lowest, my next highest. And you can see I have two scores that were crossed up on each side and one left in the middle. So that means that this 82 score is the exact middle number of our data. So the median in this case would be an 82. Now, in this case, we were left with one number left in the middle because there was an odd amount of numbers in our data set. If we had an even amount of numbers in our data set, we could be left with two numbers uncrossed in the middle. If that happens, what you'd want to do is you'd want to find the number that's in between those two numbers left off that were uncrossed. So again, we didn't have to worry about it this time because we had an odd number of test scores, but if we had an even number, we would be left with two uncrossed in the middle. Okay, so now we're going to do another measure of center, which is called the mode. And the mode in our data set, we want to think of, it's the number that occurs the most frequently. And when we talk about the frequency of a number, that just means how many times that number shows up or occurs in our data set. So if we look back at our data set, we're looking for a number that occurs more often than the other numbers in the set. So as we can see, we have a score of 82, which occurred 2 different times. All of the other scores only occurred once. So because that 82 shows up more often than the other numbers, in this case, the mode would be 82. Sometimes with mode, if all the numbers occur the same amount of times, like if all of them only happened one time, then we would have no mode at all. It would just be no mode. Or sometimes, like if we added another 64 on here, another test grade of a 64, now I have two 82s and two 64s, so they both occur more often than the 78 and the 94. So the mode would then be 82 and 64. So you can have more than one mode sometimes. Okay. The next thing we're going to look at is we're going to look at finding the range. And when we're talking about range, what we're really talking about finding is we're talking about the difference between our maximum data value and our minimum data value. So if we want to find the difference between two values, we're talking about using subtraction. So my maximum data value was 94. That was her highest test score. And my minimum data value was our 64. So we want to find the difference between them. So we're going to use subtraction. 94 minus 64, we're going to come up with a difference of 30. So in this case, the range of our data would be 30. Finally, another measure of center that's really commonly used is finding the mean or average of the data. So in class, we did an investigation with the number of people in households, and we had some stacks of cubes to represent the number of people in each person's household. And when we found the mean, what we did was we put all of those cubes together and then tried to even out or make equal size stacks to figure out what that average size household would be. So we're really gonna do the same thing here, only instead of cubes, we're gonna use the actual numbers. So if we take a look back at our data set, here's all of our test scores. So the first thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna put all of those numbers together in one big group and find out the total amount, just like we put all those cubes together. So if I put all of these together, I have 82, 78, 94, 82, and 64. If I add all of those together, I should get a total of 400. So that's all of her scores put together. Now to find the average or the mean, what we want to do is we want to break them into equal groups, just like we evened out our stacks. So we have 5 different test scores. So I basically want to take this 400 total points, and I now want to just even it out into 5 equal groups. So when we take an amount and we're breaking it into equal size groups, we're really using division. So I'm taking that 400, the total amount of all of her test scores, and I'm dividing it by 5 because we want to make 5 equal groups for the test scores. There's 5 test scores. 400 divided by 5 is going to give us an average of 80. So the average or mean of all of her test scores would be an 80.